How would it feel to have a thriving fitness business and have the freedom to enjoy life at the fullest? Well, that is exactly what the Trainer Revenue Multiplier Show is going to give you. My name is Mathew Park. This is Jaime Filer.
Hey guys.
And we are here to serve. Hello, guys. Welcome to our show. This is the podcast, guys. Looking forward to having a very special guest on the show today, guys. Looking forward to having a man who we call him Mr. Brian Melancon. I was going to call him a different powerful name, but I want to make sure we keep things professional on this interview there, brother. But he is the owner of C620 Nutrition. He's been in the fitness game now for close to 2 decades, maybe even longer than that, in multiple layers. He's one of the guys that really just the all-stars go to this guy for coaching and nutrition, getting on stages, the transformation, and the whole 9 yards. So, Brian, excited to have you on the show, my man. How are you doing today, buddy?
Thank you for having me, man. I'm doing wonderful, man. Thank you.
So, Brian, you have a unique background in fitness because obviously you've done multiple layers in it from, of course, coaching perspective, owning multiple businesses, supplementation, prep, coaching in general, a lot of things, man. So do you mind kind of giving us a little background first off on your story of how this all got going?
Yeah, man. So I have a pretty unique story. So I originally started out as a one-on-one personal trainer for Anytime Fitness, and I worked with them for multiple years. And so kind of how my story evolved is I was working for Anytime Fitness, like I said, for a while, and I got to the point where my previous boss, and I have to give Bobby so much credit, it's he was always so big on continuing education and bringing people in for continuing education, and that plays a big part of my story that I'll get to in a second. But so I was coaching at Anytime Fitness or personal training at Anytime Fitness for a while, and I moved to Baton Rouge, which is a city about an hour away from my hometown, to lead the PT program for a new gym up there. And so in this time of moving to Baton Rouge, anyone who's ever built a gym knows that construction just always goes so much longer than planned. And so moved up there, and then the gym ended up not opening for like 4, 5, 6 months later than we expected. And so part of what Bobby did every year, what he would bring in a specialist. And at the time, since things were so slow with not actually having clients to train, the gym wasn't open yet. A big part of what I got to do was just really dive into different aspects of how I wanted to continue my learning. And at that time, it was diving into nutritional sciences because I was a kinesiology major. And so that's kind of how I got everyone calls me down here the mad scientist, and because I love programming, and so I'd program in this way of just absolutely brutalizing people, but in a safe, effective way where you could still recover and make really fast progress. So I got the nickname as the mad scientist from like my kinesiology background, but I'd really gotten into nutritional sciences and started following a guy in the industry named Lane Norton. And at the time, he was getting his PhD in leucine metabolism, and so he's Dr. Lane Norton now. But was following him and really dove into studying nutritional sciences, and really followed his work a lot with what he was doing his PhD in. And I talk about him so much that Bobby actually reached out to him and got in contact with him for him to come in to be a continuing education speaker for the year. And so I mentioned the club not opening in time for a reason. So Lane had flew into Baton Rouge because that's where the seminar was going to be held at that location, but the gym wasn't still open yet. And so we ended up having the seminar at Bobby's Franklin location, which is like 3 hours away from Baton Rouge. So me and Lane got to get to know each other through the course of driving this distance, and really, developed a friendship. And then Lane started following me on social media after the seminar, and he saw the clients that I was putting out, because at the same time that I was diving into nutritional sciences, I convinced my manager at the time, Josh Bailey, he's one of my best friends too, to let me prep him for a show, and he ended up winning the show. He came to me the next year, and then that guy ended up winning, just a whole slew of shows. And then so I started growing this little local team, and it was just a side project, just a passion project. But from there, Lane started following me. He was seeing how good of condition my clients were getting in. He liked that I took a scientific approach. And so he emailed me one day and asked if I'd like to be on his preferred coaches program. And then at the same time, he ended up doing a video on YouTube about metabolic adaptation that ended up getting, 500,000 views. And at the end of the video, he actually mentioned my name as a kind of prep coach that he would recommend. And so from there, business really just exploded. And while I was doing C620 just for fun at the time, I started getting so many inquiries from all over the country that in the end of 2011, ended up making the decision to try my hand in entrepreneurship and leaving anytime. And so C620 Nutrition became official, like an official LLC, an official business in 2012. And so I've been doing contest prep for people all over the globe since 2012.
That's a long time, man.
Yeah, it's a
That's 12 years of 12 years of strict contest prep coaching. So, okay,
yeah.
So intriguing. So you've probably worked with close to 500 to 1,000 clients, I would say, probably in the last 12 years.
Yeah. I probably helped over 1,000 people.
Okay. What are your biggest takeaways you've learned, like in the last couple of years, from being in TRM, of course, a couple of years, but also in your whole 12 years, when you first began coaching to where you are now? What are those takeaways that you now that are helping, you run a better business now, or helping you manage your clients more effectively, give a better experience, whatever you want to call it, from then to now?
So from a business perspective, one of the biggest things that TRM brought to me was a more efficient system of data management for my clients. So I'm one of those people where it's like when I start doing something, it's tough for me to change. So it's like, in 2011, 2012, it's like I'm writing every program in like Word document, every training program in Word document, emailing that stuff out. My update form is a Word document filled out and emailed me weekly. And then with TRM, one of the biggest benefits for me personally was the organizational aspect of the TRM engine, where all clients are like linked to a Google Drive. And so each client has like a folder, and I switch my updates from a Word document that they filled out and emailed in weekly to a Excel sheet that's in the Google Drive that they update weekly. That way all the data is in a spot place, and just like the organization from that has helped me be so much more efficient than is like, for example, someone's like, hey, well, what was that we did? We first started, instead of having to type their name in the search bar in my Gmail, go through 100 emails, because those emails stack up, back and forth questions and working with people long term. And so now it's like, oh, we want to look at something we did on week 1, and we just click a tab at the bottom. And so that has probably been like the biggest evolution in business organizational aspect of things, is the TRM engine. And so that's been just extremely valuable for me.
Intriguing. So now what about your overall coaching in general? So let's look at the overall coaching journey, the coaching experience, because 12 years, that's over a decade of like when you first kind of got in contest prep, right? And kind of going into where you are now. So from an overall perspective, what are your biggest takeaways now compared to then?
In terms of nutrition and training, or in what aspect?
I would say in the aspect of training, nutrition, the coaching industry as a whole, what you've seen changed over the years, kind of give a perspective of what you've seen as an industry perspective and your experience over the last how many years?
Sure. So a lot of stuff that you see circulate around the industry is stuff that, if you really just look back through the history of the fitness culture and modern American dieting, has been around forever. It's like ever since the government changed the food pyramid, there's been these cyclical fad diets. And so you see stuff phase in and out, like keto, low fat, paleo, all this different stuff. And so, but the biggest thing is like, I would have to say, and a lot of people will say this about me, so I don't mind saying it, but it's like I've been a little bit ahead of my time from the beginning. It's like stuff I was doing 12 years ago. It's like it's cool to do now and very popular. And so a lot of people want to jump on jump on fads and different fad diets and stuff. But the biggest thing with working as clients is like the best diet you can give a client is one they can actually adhere to. So it doesn't like, it's like, let's say I design the absolutely most perfect diet in the world for you. But if it's something that you can't actually stick to, it's not the best diet. And so you can get people in shape with multiple different things. You can get them in shape with keto. You can get them in shape with low fat. Get them in shape with paleo. But the biggest thing is like, can they adhere to it, and does their performance improve? And so what I really try and do is design a diet that's filled with foods that they actually enjoy, and that we can see a net positive benefit of their performance, recovery, and sleep. And so it's really that's where the individualization aspect of coaching comes in. Instead of just sending people out cookie cutter diets and everyone's the same, it's like on my intake form, it's a pretty extensive intake form. And the reason why it's so extensive is because we actually want to collect data that will be useful for creating a program to create something they can stick to long term to ultimately get the results they want. And so the biggest thing I've seen in the industry is like stuff fading in and out. But it's like, if you just hyper focus on the individual client experience and not trying to jump on a fad that you've been hearing a lot of podcasts about recently, and just staying true to understanding physiology and nutritional science, it's like that. It's like, this is what I tell young coaches coming up. It's like, hyper focus on learning physiology more than you focus on anything else, and that will carry you, because you can learn client rapport and building relationships, but if you don't understand how things work, no matter what fad pops up, you won't truly understand what's happening if you don't understand how things interact with the body. And so, yeah, I mean, lots of things cycle through the industry, but sticking to a core foundation of just understanding like, hey, this is how the human body works, and sticking to your gun, also being a student and willing to learn and willing to change. I mean, for example, like something like that I personally changed on over the years is like, I used to like not have clients train abs correctly because I was like, we're getting plenty of stimulants with heavy compound squats. It's like, okay, well, that's a view that I've actually changed on, and I now do have clients train abs correctly. And so it's like little things like that, and being willing to admit like, oh, hey, like science is showing this is different. Anecdotally, it's showing different. And so let me actually change my views, because you don't want to be so ingrained in one way of thinking to thinking you're always right about everything that you're not willing to learn. And it's like being a lifetime student, the sport is the only way to actually keep evolving, because science is all gray area. There's no black and white. Like, we are figuring things out. And the benefit of science is like, hey, this can help optimize what you're doing, but also it needs to be paired with anecdotal evidence. Hey, this practically works as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's awesome, man. There's one thing most don't actually know about you that's kind of cool from a business perspective is, so Brian is a six-figure, of course, fitness, high-level fitness elite coach. He also is an owner on a seven-figure other business called Great Harvest. So he actually has multiple layers of experience running multiple businesses. What are things now? Great Harvest, of course, isn't actually a fitness company, but it's also quite a large business model, right? What are things you've noticed in growing that business and growing your company right now with coaching that are similar in both avenues from a business perspective and overall as a whole?
Yeah. So one thing, and I actually think this would be really great advice for like young and up and coming coaches and even coaches joining TRM. It's the power of social proofing, because like with coaching, one thing I've people say, I've been really blessed. I've never really had to advertise. Like, all I do is post client transformations, and like, if you do good work with people, they will tell the stories. And now, don't get me wrong, it's great to put out content and valuable information. Putting out content and valuable information will never grow your business model by as much as just having clients that get amazing results. And like the correlative like data that I've really seen between the two businesses is like, for us, like we just had one of our busiest seasons of the year. Like we grew in this particular season, Q1 of this year for Great Harvest, we grew 47% from last year. And the biggest thing I noticed was difference is like one of our products just caught storm on social media, and everyone was talking about it, so everyone wanted to try it. So we sold, 2,000 more king cakes this year than we did last year, and king cake season was a week shorter than last year. And and it really just boils down to social proofing. Like people are like, oh, like everyone was posting on social media about it, and then people would come in and try, they'd enjoy it, they'd post on social media about it. So it's like the power of social proofing and letting your work do the talk for you is so much more valuable than any just quote unquote information you can put out. And like I said, putting out information is great because we're here to serve, but nothing will scale your business faster than results.
That's a really good, that's awesome advice, man. And couldn't agree with you more. So what are things, techniques you do right now? So right now, when you're gathering your client success stories, are you referring to like testimonials of before and afters, videos, just clients just kind of passing the word? Give some tangible context there.
Yeah. So for me, like, you know, this, he fussed at me about it, but I'm not a huge social media guy and I need to get better at it. But man, like for me starting out, it's just, it wasn't video testimonials or anything like that. It was just before and after pictures, because people's before pictures, a lot of people will self-identify with that and they're like, oh, well, if they can do it, you know, like, why can't I? And so for me, side by side before and after pictures was really how my business grew and scaled, was just side by side pictures, you know. And then just also coupled that with like putting out good information and trying to love people well. But for me personally, just before and after pictures have yielded the most fruit.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Let's kind of change gears for a second, buddy, and go over some kind of your mindset, you know, your big switch of mindset, because I noticed even the last year or so, of course, you've made some big leaps and bounds, overcome some big things. And, you know, of course, how, in your view, Brian, would you tie together business and mindset? When you think of those two things, how do they connect for you, and how have they made a difference for you with your business?
Yeah, and you know, one thing, and I really have to, you know, shout you out on this, is you've helped me so much with my mindset, because we all at some point like have a limiting belief, and especially in scaling our business, and it can be fear of like the work required to go to the next step, or it can be fear of like, hey, I don't feel like I deserve this. But we all have limiting beliefs, and sometimes they're just like the smallest hurdles to get over, you know. And like for me, it's like my business, like with coaching, would always stay around like, you know, $12,000 a month, $15,000 a month. And it's just like, there's just like this limiting belief in me that I was like, oh. And I don't even, like, in hindsight, you know, even though this was only like, you know, last year, I was like, I don't know. I don't even remember what the block was. I'm like, I'm sure, you know, obviously something to do with my childhood and, you know, fear of failure and all that kind of stuff. But we had a couple really powerful meetings, and after those meetings, I remember, like, you know, within like 2 months, I went from like 15,000 to 25,000 a month, you know. And mindset in business, and really, I think being okay to do the deep dives with the vulnerable parts of like where we actually are broken, and like where we need help, and why we believe the things we believe are so important. And having someone like you that's been instrumental in like calling me out and having the hard talks when I need to, you know. Because I think we had a meeting, and you were like, bro, you should be at 20K right now. What's going on? And I was like, I don't know. You know, it's like, I was like, I can't do it, you know. And like we had like 2 really powerful calls, and like I said, in the scale of like 6 weeks, you know, jumped to 25,000 a month, and have been maintaining over that ever since. And so, yeah, I mean, mindset in business is everything. But I think the biggest thing I would say with mindset in business is like, at some level, there is going to be some self-fulfilling prophecy where you're intrinsically blocking yourself from a limiting belief, and doing the hard work of digging into like why it's there, what's the root of it, and then, you know, being okay with fixing it, and being okay with the process of fixing it. Because I'm still in process of fixing it, you know. Because after our last meeting of like, hey, where we want to scale to in the next 5 years, I'm like, okay, well, you know, new levels, new devils. You know, and so it's like, okay, well, what's my limiting belief at this level, you know, and what's my fear at this level, and being okay with the fact that, hey, we all have limiting beliefs, we all have fear, but being bold enough and courageous enough to actually deal with it, you know. getting emotionally regulated is hard work, and I think that's why so many people avoid it, and why so many people stay in a rut of just having the same turmoil over and over and over. But it's like emotional maturity, coupled, and spiritual maturity are probably the two toughest things to grow in, because they require the most self work and the most time spent in isolation, working on yourself and diving into old wounds.
Agreed. But I definitely applaud you, man, because you dug in and of course did the work, which is pretty sweet. And like to see how, even like knowing how many years of experience you have in this field, like it's a lot of years, man. It's actually decades of experience. And then to see how, like a lot of the guys, when they, men especially, come in, maybe some females too, and we have our egos, right? We're like, we don't want to get our egos broken in this process. But at the end of the day, I give you credit because your courage to remove the ego and go in deeper on behind the ego was this belief. But there was a couple other things, and all of a sudden, the switch that turned for you was kind of cool because, man, like you're already growing a 7-figure, other business that's like soaring super high right now. And the coaching is like, so what's happening here? Why isn't this going? And to see how fast you've been able to grow that now is very impressive. That's actually kind of inspiring, by the way. And to know that the quality of coach you are, it's just so impressive. And to know that as those things break through, you're breaking through and seeing you grow and grow and grow. So what would you give advice? Like what advice would you give the other coaches out there, men or women, either one, for what you went through? Like, how would you give them the advice that, in the last year to them right now? What kind of advice would you give them?
Get a coach. It's get it, like, especially from like a business perspective, is get a coach that's higher up in the tree. And like, even for like athletes, it's like, get a coach that has, a resume of clients that you want to look like. But like strictly from a business perspective, it's get a coach, for me, for example, I spent over $50,000 last year on coaching, between you and a local coach that I have. And Great Harvest grew 20% last year, and then it's coaching grew probably, I don't know, 40-50%. I don't know the math off the top of my head, but it's like, and you have a business in at a level that I want to be one day. It's like you're further up in that tree, and so it's like removing your ego enough to say like, hey, I actually do need a coach, and actually do want a coach. And I think it's hard for people to get coached because you have to come to the realization of that, like, I don't know everything and I can't do everything by myself. But it's like, man, it's like, instead of hyper focusing on your weaknesses, it's like double down on your strengths and then invest in someone that can help raise your weaknesses without you having to invest this huge time equity into it. So that, like, I say hire a coach. It's like I said, I personally invested a ton of money into myself last year, and reaping the benefits of it now. And it, like, I easily made that money back, and then it would just keep paying for itself in the years to come. I would say invest in a coach, whether it's a business coach, a content prep coach, a lifestyle coach. It's like, get coaching and be humble enough to say like, hey, I need help, and this person's further up in the tree than me.
That's awesome. And that was great. A great share. Now, question on the vulnerable side for you, if you don't mind to share, buddy, is when you hit that barrier of resistance, almost like, it's scary, it's uncomfortable. It's like, oh my goodness gracious. What, with your kind of your upgraded mentality, or even like your learning journey over all these years, how do you approach those now? Like when you hit those barriers, what's Brian's moves to overcome them?
Yeah. So I think, one of the bigger barriers was, because I've been thinking about it, as we were talking, because earlier I said like, man, I don't even remember what it was about, but I think one of the barriers for me was that the fear of failure, in the sense of not being able to sustain it, because it's like fear of like, oh, well, what if I get to 20-30K a month, but then it's like, then something happens and I drop back down, then I'm perceived as a failure again. Because with Great Harvest, I went through a big season of personal failure, because I went from this place of being like a really, really high level in one industry, and then, bought Great Harvest, and then the first 4 years were just absolute hell. And, it's, I didn't have that affirmation of, people telling me I was great all the time because I'm in this field that I'm not used to, that I'm sucking at, bleeding dry. And so that fear of going back to failure was probably like a limiting belief. But now it's like, oh, well, I know I won't fail. And even if I do, I know I can rebuild because I've done it multiple times now. So I think that would be the biggest difference. And it's just, failure's not the thing. And even if you do rebuild, then just intrinsic belief of like, oh no, like I'm not going to fail because I'm willing to do what's required. And it's like, I say that now, but then, the next meeting we have, we're like, hey, let's get our sales. And they're like, oh, it really is like an onion, man. It's like, in seasons, it's like you say these things and you believe them, and then you encounter the next obstacle, and you actually have to like, okay, do I really believe that? Yeah, that's what I would say there.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Who is Brian 2.0?
Oh man, Brian.
I totally put you on the spot, bro.
Brian 2.0 is trying to get better every day. I think that would be the best explanation for Brian 2.0 is trying to get better every day. And I say that because it is such an intentional act. Like, I mean, you have kids, this. I don't even have kids. My businesses are kind of like my kids, but it's like, man, it's like I look at my niece, she's 10 now. It's like, dude, time is just flying so fast. And it is just such an intentional act to focus on improving on a daily basis. Because like if it's not intentional, days, weeks, months, and then years will slip by and nothing will have changed. And it will seem like yesterday where you made that commitment for things to change. And so, like I said, Brian 2.0 is like consciously trying to get better every day.
That's super good, man. It's cool because hearing you in this interview right now, and obviously knowing you, thanks to Jace Lopez for introducing you, because, thanks to him, we're having these talks now. And even when you first kind of got into TRM, I saw this picture of you and Jace, and I was like, wait, I know that guy on that picture.
Yeah.
About that because you were coaching Jace back in the day. That was cool. But to see, like someone like you, Brian, who is known in the industry, you've been in this industry long enough, and see how you to step forward, you took a step back, then took 3 steps forward, then took a step back, and then took 3 steps more forward. You kept doing these like growth moves, and you were never like, you always were open to like, improving, or where can I improve, and going those scary tunnels that are like most guys would never go into, or guys would go into. You did those. So my hat goes off to you, because it's actually really exciting to see how much you've changed, and also how well you're looking eager to want to go to the next level, because we can get comfortable doing those things, and we all do it. But you're an inspiration for a lot of coaches out there, because you have to in the education, you have worked with big names, you have built a great business, and you're always aspiring to get better. Yeah.
And so can I tell you a funny story?
Please shoot, man. Go ahead.
So how I heard about you. I love Jace to death. He's one of my best friends. Super blessed. I was able to coach him for his first 5 years of bodybuilding, and so. But how I learned about you is so Jace was personal training. Then he opened his first gym. Then he moved into his second gym, and now he has his own third gym again. And so he's doing amazing things. But Jace would always like just randomly ask me, like he'd be like, hey, what's the biggest month you've ever, and this is before I ever heard about TRM or anything, and he was in TRM, and so he'd text me, he'd be like, hey, what's the biggest month you've ever done? And I'd be like, I don't know, like 21K, and he's like, okay, cool. And then like he'd text me and he'd be like, hey, what's like your average month? And then I text him, and like like I just kept getting these like random texts a couple times a year about like my sales, and then all of a sudden like I see him holding like a 20K plaque, which means he hit 20K for 3 months in a row, and then I was like, hold up, like I was like, I helped you get started, and now you're past me. Like, what are you doing differently? And he's like, oh, bro, it's TRM, Mathew Park, he's awesome. And so it's like, so that's how I heard about you, was through Jace's success and his growth. And I'm like, I was so happy to like see him pass me up. That's such a cool thing. But it's like, but also it was like, hang on, like you're doing something different, because like it's like now your sales pass to mine, and and so it's like, so that's how I actually heard about TRM, was through Jason's success with y'all.
Oh, that's so funny, man. Definitely, Jason's a bull of energy. We love him, man. That's so cool.
Yeah, he's a bull in a china shop for sure.
Yeah, he's a very tall and large man. Put it that way. But how tall are you, Brian?
Oh, I'm a short bro. I'm a short king. I'm 5'8".
Oh, you're the same height as me. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
but you're like way muscled more than I am. So I'm just gonna keep my clothes on over here and my shirt on. not show my arms, okay? Buddy, such a pleasure, man. So where can people find you online?
So the best place to find me is, I'm not super active on Facebook, but Instagram at C620 Nutrition. If you want to check out my website, it's really simple, c620nutrition.com. But if you're interested in coaching, just put a go before that. So go.c620nutrition.com. That will take you to my application landing page. And so pretty much at C620, wherever, C620 Nutrition, wherever you go.
Amazing, man. Thank you, Brian. Man, you're definitely the best. I really appreciate you, buddy, as far as giving us your time today for our second 2 times as a charm, which I appreciate that as well, buddy. And guys, want to follow us again, Trend Revenue Multiplier on Instagram, on Facebook, on our website. Look forward, of course, giving you guys more value, more support for your business and also in your life. Brian, thank you, man. You rock.
Thank you, brother. Love you, man.
Love you too, brother.